very good evening to all of you who are joining, who are going to be joining, or those who see this video later. Welcome to day two of the premier D2C Tech Conference by Instamojo. In the morning, we already had one workshop where we talked to Ankur Sharma, who discussed key performance indicators for D2C brands for the first workshop. Now, for the second workshop, we have with us Akash Gehani, the co founder and the chief operating officer here at Instamojo. Drawing from the experiences of 2 million plus businesses that have used Instamojo to grow online, Akash will present to you a playbook that will help you start a lean and agile e commerce business. A business that is scalable and also responsive to dynamic changes. Thank you so much, Akash, for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Rahi. It's a pleasure to be here. I think we're in very exciting times. With the spurt that we are seeing across the board in D2C brands, and I think the bar is getting raised every other day. So yeah, I'm happy to be at this point where we get to see this. Where you're getting to expose and power some of these brands. At the same time, yeah, helping share our learnings with this, right? So I think it's a great time for the industry as such, and let's do a small bit to to make it even stronger.
Absolutely. So, Akash, feel free, take it forward.
Great, thanks. So can yeah, the screen is visible, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think let me get started with this. Yeah, so I think the topic is building a lean and agile D2C e-commerce startup. Now this is a topic which is something very close to my heart, and the reason I say this is because I've always been a fan of running things in a very minimal, in a very lean manner. uh, at the same time, trying to do things where we you keep moving fast, you keep taking smaller steps, right? You keep doing smaller things, and all of them essentially lead to culminate in something like in a big success of sorts, right? I'm always a big fan of that. Not a big fan of trying to do things perfectly, trying to do things with a big bang, waiting to create something which is like an incredibly good product, or make a perfect product, right? Because I also believe there is nothing called a perfect product, there is nothing called a perfect business. What all of us need to do and strive to do for is try to make it good enough, try to make it successful, because the boundaries keep changing every day, and you never really know what the finishing line is, right? All you can do is be a better version of yourself, make a better, stronger version of your business. And that's a journey which you have to keep focused on every single day, right? You do things better, you sell better, you get feedback from your customers, you iterate on that, and you keep doing this day in day out, right? So I think that's I think what it's about. Instead of trying to like go to the drawing board, build kind of a perfect thing, right, which could take forever, which may never even happen, right? So not always a fan of that. Yeah. So why should a startup be lean and agile, right? Simple as that. I think we live in very dynamic times. Today we are here, we're talking about this, D2C boom. But when did it really start? It's not that D2C is a new word, right? I think we're seeing this buzz today, but it's always been there. Uh, what has happened is the last few years, over the last decade, right? Some of the things which have happened is people have got used to technology, people have got used to transacting online. Uh, Events like e-commerce, and when COVID happened, and people got even more people got comfortable with transacting online. So I think those are some of the triggers. We've seen Shark Tank for the last couple of years, and I'm sure everyone out there who is a D2C brand or an aspiring D2C brand would have seen Shark Tank, would have seen the kind of businesses and the ideas which are mushrooming over there. So a lot of this has happened. So what's really happening, if you ask me 10 years back, would I be willing to buy certain things online? I would say, yeah, maybe, right? Maybe some things, yes, I was happy ordering books, maybe few more things. But would I be willing to order, like, let's say a new skin cream, or like, maybe a new brand of tea which I have never even heard of, right? I don't even know who this person or brand is, never heard of before, which could be based in like a tier 2, tier 3, 4 city of of the country. So today we're doing that. And so customer behavior changes really soon, right? No one could have predicted this would have happened maybe 5 7 odd years back, but that is happening today, right? So things change, customers change, the market competition change, and technology is moving faster than all that we can think of. So I think that's like a really big thing. The other is what all of this does, right? When technology spreads so much, and it makes things it makes things simpler to do, right? Like we could not have imagined a single person running, let's say, a business worth a few lakh rupees or even a few crore rupees, right? This could not have been the case maybe a decade back or two, right? But today technology empowers us to do that. We've seen so many brands on Instamojo itself, smaller businesses just starting out, someone working out of their homes trying to sell these products in cases to a global audience, and they're able to reach significant scale with just one or two members in the team, right? So uh, essentially what we can do today is, thanks to all the tools and technology that we have available, we can do so much more with so few resources. So being and when the power of these resources becomes so high, being able to efficiently manage them also becomes extremely tricky. And that is where I think a lot of where the success lies, right? How much can we do with how less we have. Yeah, avoid wasting time and resources on strategies that don't work, and respond quickly to our customers, right? I think one of the most important things is how, as a business, I think this is something that we'll talk about a little more in subsequent slides. But this is something that is extremely critical. It doesn't matter what kind of a business we are. We could be a D2C business, we could be a bank, we could be whoever, right? If we don't listen to our customers, we won't be there for the longer run, period, right? I mean, as simple as that. It's We have to listen to our customers, you have to get their feedback, you have to solve their problems, you have to add value to their lives, and keep iterating from there. So I think this is something that we will we'll talk about a lot more as we go forward. So yeah, so there is no real step to step guide, right? I mean, if someone tells you how do you create a business, how do you run a big or successful business, there is no single playbook, there is no guide saying, what, okay, follow step 1 2 3, and you'll be there, right? Ultimately, businesses, especially in the early days, right, when you're trying to start off and you do something new, it's a lot more art than it's a science. No one can be sure, when they tell you, okay, you do this and you're going to work, right? Because again, there is no one size fits all approach here. But having said that, there are certain things which are basic truths, right? Or basic principles out there. For a simple example, right, a customer will always want something that is cheaper, that is faster, that's of better quality, right? That's going to be true forever, no matter where we are, in which era, in which century we are, right? That's always going to be holding true. So I think there are certain maxims, certain principles that we should be always looking to abide by. One is to build a MVP, a minimum viable product. Now, what do you mean by that, right? Minimum viable product for me is a simple version of a product which has, which does just enough to solve a customer's problem, right? It's something that all of us can, I mean, we at Instamojo have, always done this, right? In the, like, I believe we are not just MVP in the early days. I think we are perpetually in the MVP mode. What it really means is you do the minimum possible things which solves a customer's problem while adding value to them, and which also creates a bit of a delight to the customer, right? The idea here is you launch something with the minimum amount of, so I mean, there's one ratio which I look at, right, which is about how much feedback do you get versus how much time and resources you spend to get that. If you're able to maximize this, I think that's the ultimate goal of the MVP. So the goal is to get as much feedback as you possibly can, and as early, right? I mean, essentially doing it by spending the minimum amount of time, manpower, money, whatever resources you have, right? So MVP doesn't mean it has to be a suboptimal product. It's not something which doesn't add any value, right? I think a lot of times you confuse folks with that, right? Saying, what, it's something that does just the minimum. Yes, it should do just the minimum, but when you do the minimum, you're still solving someone's problem, right? It is still something that a customer should be willing to pay for. So look at, like, there are so many examples of MVPs out there. Groupon, Airbnb, right? If you look at this, your little screenshot over here, right, that we have. This is how Airbnb used to look in the earlier days, right? And does it do everything? Does it solve all kinds of problems? No. Right. Today you can do so much on an Airbnb, right? You can travel across the world, you can have, you can book hotels and homestays and whatnot, right? You can make trips, you can plan, you can get local guides and so on and so forth. Was it possible on day one or even day five or, like, day 365? It's not, right? I mean, the core problem that they figured in the at the, like, back in the day, right, when they started off was, can I just rent out my couch, right? Can I just rent out my couch or a spare room which I have, and would someone be willing to pay for it? And that was a test, right? And when they launched it, they got great feedback, right? Yes, people were willing to do that. People wanted to make an extra buck. They wanted to provide a wholesome experience to someone else who's visiting their city. So it did solve a problem. It is something that customers were willing to pay for, and that's how it got started. In fact, a lot of great products out there do begin with MVP. Right? I think Craig's List is one of our top examples there, right? The product, as you know, it started off looking as just a classified site of sorts, just like a bunch of links on a page. And you know what? It's still $1 million business, right? Even today. So that's how it works. Uh, I think D2C is a fantastic space to do MVPs, right? Because while setting up your own website, setting up your own distribution channel today is easier than ever, right? You can have your own website, you can use a platform like Instamojo, have it up and running in a matter of 5 minutes. It doesn't take any time at all. You have all kinds of tools to be able to market your customers. We have all kinds of, products and platforms that help you ship your products, right? So it's not something where you have to spend a lot of time or money on. We have, the integration to help you ship your products and everything, right? So you can do everything in a very, very simple manner. But does it mean you have to do that on day one? Maybe not, right? Essentially, today, if you're out there thinking, you know what, I'm great at baking cookies. How do I sell these, right? Maybe the first step is not to build your own website. The first step is just to put out, like, try to sell to 10 customers, right, who you know of. Do you have tools like WhatsApp? You may have your apartment, uh, your apartment complex WhatsApp group or something, or you may have an Instagram handle where you may have like 100 odd plus friends and followers over there. Why not just put out a few posts over there, right? You put out some images across, access your like your audience, right? I mean, everyone is an audience for you, right? So, and just test it out, seeing, are they willing to do this, right? Are they willing to purchase from you? And how simple is that, right? At this point, you need nothing, right? Just put out a post out there. If someone wants to, is interested, they could just transfer the money to you via UPI or something, and you could send them the product by local courier. You need not look at optimizing it on day one. And see, because the idea at this point is to test out, right? To test out if your cookies are good enough, if people would be interested in them, if they want to, like, how much would they want to pay you? Does it work as per, as per their taste and all, right? I mean, for all that, you'll realize that, yeah, maybe what I'm baking is not good enough. Or you'll get some really valuable feedback, right? Where some people might find it a little too creamy, some might find it a little, less sweet or more sweet, and you'll figure out some niche around it. Like, I know a friend who was doing this, and they figured that, what, there was, at least where they live, there was a very significant number of folks who were they got this feedback from folks that who had kids and all, and for some reason a lot of those kids had peanut allergies. And they got this, and like, what, why don't we make nut free cookies? And just that fact that it was nut free became a really big thing, because in their school, in their community, it spread like wildfire. And once it started, yes, over time they could make, they could have their own professional website and everything, and they could build a strong business after that. But today, with all the tools that we have, doing an MVP is extremely simple. All you just need minutes. All you need to do is work on your product, share that, and talk to your customers, right? I think that's the most important. When you send that individual bag of cookies or a pack of cookies to anyone, get that feedback. Go call them, talk to them, see what worked for them, what did not. Ask them all kinds of questions, right? In terms of how much would they generally be, would be paying for stuff like this out there. Does this make sense for them, right? If you're selling it for 50 rupees or 20 rupees, right, does it even make sense, right? Can you make a decent business on the back of it? So get all that kinds of questions and feedback in. That's how the MVP works. Yeah, so I think this is something that we just spoke about, right? As a D2C brand, you can do a lot of things, right? You can have a single landing page. You can just have a simple product catalog, which you could share with them. You could put this, in a WhatsApp story, share those images with someone. uh, a simple checkout process, and we know how simple that is right today. And you need basic analytics to be able to see who it is, who's interested, who's coming to pay you. How do they do that, where do they come from, and of course, right, some way to get feedback on, from this. It's the extremely short journey is a catalog to your own landing page, and then it becomes a full-fledged website, right, with all the tools that you want post that. So why am I a big fan of this MVP approach is because you don't want to spend, no matter how less the cost is, but you still don't want to spend 10,000 rupees on day one on something which you don't know if it's going to work or not, right? When you haven't even figured out uh, what your cookies are going to be like, what's your brand name, how are you going to price it, all of it, right? Those are things that you want to figure out over time. And the sooner you get talking to customers, the sooner you get their feedback, the better it will always hold you. So yeah, so I think that's, and if you have any questions, please please point them out, please share them. We'll be happy to take them during this, or after this call. So yeah, I think the next step is to measure. I hope some of you all have attended the the previous workshop by my co-founder Ankur. I think that's a super insightful session on what kind of metrics should you be looking at when you're running a business, right? Especially a D2C business at that. So I mean, and over here, right, especially today, right, in today's times when there is so much of startup coverage out there, and everyone tracking all kinds of business metrics and numbers, I think it's very easy to get confused, right? Okay, what is it that what should we be? What is my LTV? And what is my GMV? And this and that, right? What is my repeat purchase? And how are my cohorts looking and stuff like that? I think this all of that will follow, right? Every metric has its place. There is a time, a place, and a different stage for every metric in your business life cycle, right? But yes, in the early days, some of the things that you should all be very very careful about is, one of that, the most critical one is cost per acquisition. And this is where I think a lot of D2C brands, I mean any brand for that matter, D2C brands especially, go to fail right over time. Cost per acquisition simply means, what are you spending to acquire every single customer? And of course, right, how you define an acquisition or a customer is up to you. But I think the simplest way of defining that is, someone is a customer when they come and they make a transaction, right? They make a purchase from you. So how much do you spend on acquiring them? Are you doing offline campaigns? Are you running are you like doing some kind of like pamphlets or inserts in newspapers? Are you putting some kind of posters out there? Are you spending online? Are you running ads on Instagram or Google and all? Whatever that may be, look at the total aggregate amount that you are spending. See how many customers are you able to acquire with that. And essentially that's simply what cost per acquisition is, right? This is where most D2C brands do end up failing, because over time brands do not have a great grip on this. Especially when you're trying to grow too fast, you end up spending inordinate amounts on it. If you're a funded company, then yes, that is your owner said you have to grow faster. And some of these metrics go for a toss. So be very careful, be very mindful of them. I think that's one. Uh, Conversion rate, yes, again, right? Conversion rate simply is how many customers come to me, and like what percent of those customers actually end up converting, right? If I get 100 visitors on my website, but two of them end up purchasing a product from me, then that is 2% is my conversion rate, right? So simply at that, conversion rate is something that we have to keep optimizing. What we need for that is beautifully well designed pages, a very nicely designed website. How like the right kind of communication on it, the right price point, everything matters over there, right? So I think those are things that we have to be careful about. Today, of course, there is a whole set of tools and analytics and stuff that help you in measuring and optimizing this. uh, the third is social media traction, and I think customer feedback, right? The two go hand in hand essentially, because again, social media is one of the primary ways where we are able to reach out to customers and get their feedback. Today, if you put out a post out there, right? You put out a post on Instagram and other channels. What kind of feedback does it get? Are you getting or your folks or audience to engage with it? Are they liking? Are they commenting? Are they sharing? Are they tagging other folks who would be interested or not in it? I think those are some of the key things to look at. It. All of these come under social media traction, and the more you are able to, the better it is, right? Because this is something which can work for you organically very well. You put out a post out there and you need not spend money on it. If if your images are well designed, if you have a nice little caption to it, and like if you're able to engage with the audience in the right manner, we've seen, right, posts that get a lot of attention, a lot of views, and that's all. And you're able to add on to your follower counts and stuff very very quickly. So that is a very cheap, inexpensive way of adding, like acquiring customers and being able to engage with them. If you constantly have to spend money on ads or something, then well, your business is in for trouble, right? Ultimately, a good business is one which isn't spending on something on a day-to-day basis, right? Today we all know about Amol and other brands, right? And they have a very strong brand recall. And why is it? Because over the years they have worked out great campaigns, great products first of all, but also great campaigns that be the top of recall, right? Today, if I think of milk, or if I think of butter, other milk products, Amul is like one of the foremost in our minds, right? They've been able to build that over years and decades, right? Of course, it's not easy to get to that level of recall, but we always have to make a start. Because today, if any brand, right, even if a brand like Amul has to spend every day on acquiring a new customer, then no matter how good your product is, you just won't be able to make it as a business, right? I think that's extremely critical, how well you're able to acquire customers without spending money of them. And thanks to the digital space age that we are in, social media plays a really important part over there. And the third is, of course, right, the key thing, which is also essentially an extension of MVP, is learn and pivot, right? So the simple idea is, you do not want to get emotionally tied and tied or attached to anything, right? And as businessmen, as entrepreneurs, we see this all the time. Oh yes, I bake the best cookies. How can they not like it, right? Or if someone doesn't like it, or if you do not get like very very positive feedback at times, we end up thinking, yeah, maybe there's a problem with this guy, there's a problem with that guy. Oh, maybe they don't have great taste, or they just like they just they don't want to pay money, they are cheap and all, right? I think there are times when that kind of a view of feedback might like our interpretation of that feedback could be valid. But if that keeps repeating, right, if one person may not be willing to pay, if the second and third and fourth, if I see that as a pattern, then you have to ask yourself, right, am I really making good cookies, right? Like, are they really good? Or am I selling them for like an extremely high price, right, which doesn't work for these sort of folks. So I think there is a point where you have to look at the numbers. Numbers don't lie, right? I mean, there is always a way of interpreting them, but you have to keep your biases aside and always ask those questions, right? Is it working? Is it not? And if it's not, then you have to be impartial to it and say, what, okay, maybe it's time for a pivot. Maybe it's time I, make some changes, right? And it could be very drastic changes at that. It could be as simple as shutting down the business, trying out something new, or maybe pivoting into a different direction. And that's where we come to, right? When you talk about pivoting, there are of course different kinds of pivots, right? I think just a few examples over here. I'll quickly just run through them, right? I think the names are self-explanatory here. A zoom in pivot is where you see that okay, maybe just one, you essentially narrow down and drill down on one specific feature and make that a big thing, right? Like for Instamojo, it used to be payment links, right? We said payment link is something which solves a big problem for folks out there. Let's go really deep and solve this for them. If you're baking cookies, you might realize, what, okay, the whole set of cookies out there, but nut-free cookies, right? Maybe there is something out there, right, which not everyone is working on, and I'll be the best person to make nut-free cookies, right? So go really deep into that, focus on one feature. Other cases, you might want to zoom out, because as your brand grows, you want to add more products and more categories, right? You're not happy selling, just two types of cookies. You might want to sell, five cookies after that. Maybe add some more things. Maybe add a cupcake to it, or maybe some kind of beverage to go with it. So, that's a zoom out pivot. A customer segment pivot is where your product is actually good, but maybe you need to find the right audience for it. Maybe you're trying to sell to like, let's say, kids, but maybe what, your cookie is actually very healthy, right? So instead of selling to kids, maybe you look at adults, right? Because adults also want it, but they're very like, they are mindful of it, right? You want something healthier, you want something with fewer calories. Maybe you find a different audience which kind of works for it. A customer need pivot again goes hand in hand with customer segment, and what is the segment you're solving for, what is the need for them. Maybe for the same, I'm looking at the same customer, but solving a different need for them, right? Like, I could pivot from the cookie being and like an indulgence, to a cookie being like a healthy snack for them, right? So the customer is the same, but the problem that I solve for the customer, it changes, right? So I think that's one of the things. A platform pivot again, right? What is a platform that I'm using for selling? Could be online, offline, a different channel, maybe a different marketplace or something else, right? So stuff like that. A business model pivot again, right? Am I selling cookies? Am I selling cookies by by a pack or by the dozen? Can I, instead of selling cookies by that, can I sell a subscription, right? That's a business model pivot. Can I tell you, no, no, I'll give you a very healthy cookie, and every on like every every day, right? At the right time, right? Like, so you can avoid the need for very unhealthy snack, right? So that's something that could be a business model pivot. uh, Engine of growth pivot is essentially the kind of channels we use to acquire customers. And that's something that any business does all the time, right? Today we'll focus on one channel, tomorrow we'll focus on some other channel, because, well, you always want to add more channels, and maybe some channels are not really working out, or tap out of something and tap into something else. So that's one. And again, distribution channel, right? Which is again about identifying where your customers are. Are they shopping online? Are they shopping offline? Are they attending, are they visiting malls and some of those events on the weekends? Maybe I should make a presence over there, or like stuff like that. So I think, so yeah, I think these are some of the pivots. It could be again, right? It could be in terms of the product, it could be in the customer, it could be the problem or need that you're solving for the customer, as well as a business model, or around the acquisition channels for them. So yeah, I think, and I don't think there is any business out there, right? And I will extend this to outside of D2C, right? I don't think there's any business which would have run for a fair amount of time or has been successful but has not pivoted. I just don't think that's possible, because all of us start with some kind of an idea and idealistic vision, but over time, reality hits, and then we see, not because uh, maybe the market is a little different from what we thought, or maybe just the market changes, right? And as we've seen, I know we touched upon this earlier, the market does change fairly fast. Your customer taste and preferences and media out there, it's constantly evolving. So along with that, as a business, you also have to evolve, right? So you look at YouTube, right? YouTube started out as a video dating site, right? Like, who knew that? So, like, who knew, right? This is like back in early 2000s, right? It seemed like a crazy good idea, but well, I mean, it was just the wrong time for it, or maybe the product wasn't good enough. But yes, what really happened is they realized that, what, folks are putting up some random videos out there, and there are other people who are watching it. And this is something which took them by surprise, right? So I think that's why they didn't double down on. So what, everyone wants to be a creator of sorts, and there is going to be a massive appetite, as as internet penetration spreads, and bandwidth becomes simpler and cheaper, and our devices become better, that yeah, video consumption is going to go through the roof. And like, cut forward to almost 2 decades, and we see where we are, right? There are like millions of channels out there, and you can watch videos on all kinds of things, right? Educational and entertainment and so on, right? That's practically everything that you want out there. uh, and of course, right, one is kind of a zoom out pivot, right? Which is something that Instamojo is what we did, right? For us, we focused on the audience, which is people who want to go online, people who are digitally savvy, who want to build a new age business out there, and we helped them with collecting payments. And over time, we figured that what these businesses want more, right? You don't want just want a payment solution. You also want to be able to have your own brand, your own website, and do all these other things more efficiently. And that's how we built our entire product, which is about helping you set up a storefront, and with all the tools that you need with it. So essentially, being a one-stop shop for MSMEs and D2C brands out there. So yeah, I think there is a very good paradox that we have here, is right, which is we say perfecting the
Akash,
MVP.
I'm sorry to
Yep.
cut you off,
Yes,
but there's some interesting when you were talking about the pivots, right? If you could go back to the two slides before,
sir.
something very interesting that you said is that any business, when it's scaling, it keeps pivoting, and that especially in today's time, unless you pivot, you will not be able to survive, right? And whether it's a small business or a massive brand like Google, everybody pivots. So there must just be like this graveyard of pivots, or graveyard of ideas, graveyards of products that are launched, and then brands that try to start out and couldn't, because they just could not change and adapt.
Yep. Of course, there is. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, see, pivot doesn't always mean that you entirely change what you're doing, right? I mean, that could be one way, but also when you talk about bigger brands, right, or bigger businesses, let's take the example of Facebook. How Facebook started off, of course, was a very, like a very, as a small college project, where you essentially about rating your friends in terms of
Hmm.
how do they look and all. Of course, it was a very stupid thing if you call it. That's how it started, and at that, so I mean, of course, right, that did work to get some traction, but that was never going to be like a long term, a long term sustainable product, right? There always had to be something more to it. And that's when the idea of building friends and friend groups and all came into play, right? Where you could essentially be in touch with your friends. Over time, one of the next things that they did was have a feed. And I remember when they launched the feed, I think this is maybe late 2000s, there's a lot of backlash, and people say, no, what is this? This is random stuff. All I want to see is how my friends are doing. I don't
Hmm.
want to see this feed, and with like stuff like news and other things, and other random updates over there. But you know what, it worked brilliantly for them, because it got us so much more information, so many more updates, something that they could really optimize on in terms of algorithmically and all, and the engagement was through the roof. Now, is that a pivot of sorts? you could say just realigning certain things. I think that's actually a very big pivot, right? Because you focusing, you're going from something which is very very focused on friends, and to basically general updates about what's going on in their life. It's a very different thing, right? Going from messaging to basically updates and communication, and essentially be staying in touch, right? So it was a fairly big change. The next thing which happened is, then they started running ads, which of course are way to monetize, and then mobile happened, and everyone felt, what, now that mobile is here, Facebook is doomed, because you don't have this endless scroll and all, you
Hmm.
cannot see a lot of information, all. But you know what, mobile actually played into their hands, right? Because it works so much better, because prior to that they were focusing so much on up the platform part of it, which is about having games and other apps on top of it. But essentially what people wanted was, yes, they were engaging with those, but what they really wanted was just to know, like, I just want to know what Rahi is doing, right? I just want to know where she's traveling, or who she friends with, and how like what are general updates are happening in
Hmm.
your life. And the feed was a beautiful way, and mobile just really helped it. uh, Around that point, Facebook did also realize that, what, over time people are going to get bored of it, because what, that is social behavior, right? You do certain things and you get bored, or things move, right? Things change. And they saw this opportunity in Instagram, and today Instagram is the most used product of Facebook. I mean, it's actually bigger than Facebook by itself, in terms of the the number of users, the interaction that it's getting. Even from the perspective of running a business and advertising, Instagram is like killing it, right? So it that's also has been a pivot of sorts, right? You going from a very friend, and a very update slash text focused product updates, to something which is totally visual, right?
Hmm.
Which is what Instagram is, extremely visual. A lot of things that you see in your Instagram feed, they are not by people, right? They are, a lot of them are brands, or things which are interesting, right? So it's gone from becoming a friend circle's first product to something which is just very engaging, and something which is very happening out there. So I think a lot of these are pivots in different ways. So I think, yeah, I mean, when I say pivot, it's more about seeing where, like, essentially playing by the, seeing where the leaves are, right?
It's a
You
realignment, as you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, you keep evolving, right? You see, because things change, the market changes, technology changes, your customers change, and you have to be, like, in touch with it. Because if you're not, so a lot of, had Facebook, let's say, not done this, right? Let me ask a simple question here: how many folks over here engage with the traditional Facebook product, right? Not Instagram, not WhatsApp, right? Just pure Facebook, in terms of what it used to be, right? The feed, and what our friends are doing. Uh, Everyone I've known, I have stopped doing that. A lot of people I know don't go to Facebook anymore. Yes, they engaged Instagram massively, usually on WhatsApp all the time, but Facebook not so much.
Has reduced,
So,
definitely.
so yeah, I mean, so is it a bad product? No, because it was a fantastic product, right? It worked so well, right? It was one of the best designed products out there. So it's not always that a great product becomes a bad product. It's just certain things change, right? So the product gets irrelevant of sorts. So you have to ensure that you don't get irrelevant. Uh,
See, that's where, as a co-founder, I'm asking you, when they see that, okay, like the product that I made, or the product that I envisioned, the pain point that I envisioned, that I was trying to minimize, when you see that not mattering anymore, how do you still realign while emotionally distancing yourself from that realignment, right? Because what I'd originally started out with is not working. I have to now think of new ways. So as a founder, how do you actually deal with that? I know this is not directly a part of the workshop, but still.
No, I think it's always about, as someone who's heading a business, and as anyone in the company for that matter, but definitely for the leaders of a business, you can't be involved day to day in the operations part of it. Right? You can't be fretting over, okay, how many orders have come in, okay, this order has to be shipped out, how much are we spending today, and this. You can't be always bogged down with the day to day operational stuff of it, right? You always have to keep one eye out on the bigger picture, on
Okay.
what is happening out there, right? In terms of the market, technology, in terms of customer behavior, all of it, right? And I think that's where you get these insights from, right? So you have to keep an eye out on that, because if you're like really knee deep into things, then you're missing the bigger picture.
Hmm.
And as someone who's heading a business, you can't miss a bigger picture, right? Because for all these things, for example, today, if we are running, if you're helping businesses get started, with their website and a storefront and everything, right? Yes, it's a big thing. It's also a big problem for them. But over time, this will be done. You know what? Yes, this problem is well and solved. Now what
What
next, right?
next?
And what we'll realize is, because customer needs also change, and businesses will be looking for
Hmm.
different things. They'll be asking us, okay, how can I market my products better? and we'll be like, oh god, if I can't help you this, they'll find someone else who'll help them with it.
Hmm.
So there will always be, new and newer players, right? And whichever you look at any business out there, they'll constantly be adding products, adding distribution channels, adding other things, right? So that's how you have to, and of course, it's not always that all of these are gonna work. Some of these are gonna fail, which is why, when you do these new things, right? When you add a newer product, when you add a newer distribution channel or something or the other, you have to look at the MVP approach, because you don't want to be sabotaging your existing business. You can't be spending far too much time or resources or money into that, right? You don't want to sabotage this, but yes, you want to always be experimenting, always on the lookout for what's next, right? What's bigger? How can I do things better? So that's where the MVP approach also comes in. Yes, you do something new, you get feedback, you do, you spend very less on it, and if it works, then go
Then you
bigger,
start
double
to
click,
scale it.
double down on that.
Okay, I think this is a beautiful segue into I know what the next what it just started right before the interruption. So there's a question: can an MVP be profitable, and when should I decide to launch add-on services? I know we touched upon it, but I guess you can take it forward now.
Sure. I think I think profitability is not usually the goal of MVP. Of course, so like, you whatever you do, right? When you start off with an MVP, you have to be very clear with what your success metrics are, and those metrics can be, like, of course, it can vary depending on what kind of a product or MVP it is, right? So for a simple example, when you are looking to, start off with, selling, let's say, cookies, right? The early example that we took, right? You want to tap into your existing, apartment WhatsApp groups, or, like, smaller channels of people directly. The goal there should not be profitability, because what you're looking to do is get feedback to see if these are folks who would be interested in ordering cookies on a regular basis, and if they are, then, what kind of cookies, at what price point, and, for what reason, right? Is it for a snack? Is it for an occasion? Is it to gift someone? What is that? I think so. The aim of MVP is to be able to validate a lot of these things and get those learnings in. It's not about being profitable. Of course, so what happens after an MVP is, the next step is a product market fit. Product market fit is somewhere that you have to think about profitability, in the sense, what is product market fit, right? Essentially, you reach that point where you have, these users with you, your customers. You should have repeat customers, who keep coming to you, and you are able to, charge them the right amount, in the sense, that yes, if I'm selling this for 100 rupees, I'm adding value worth more than 100 rupees for them, right? 100 rupees is something that they feel is, it's reasonable, that they pay for, and they would be willing to pay for this over and over again. Because if I'm selling something like cookies, I know that they would be ordering from me again, right? Whether they'll order every week or every day or every month is something that I'll have to validate, right? I'll have to figure out, but they will order from me again. If someone purchases cookies and, they don't come back for, another year, or like, they never come back to me, then that's not product market fit, because, what, maybe did not work for them. Either it was too expensive, the cookies were not good enough, something or the other. So I think those are things that, you have to, profitability, and, being able to monetize, having the right price point. That's something to figure out for product market fit. So that's not under the purview of MVP as such. Yeah, I hope that answers. Yeah, so I think I see another question from Rakesh here, which is about how do I minimize my financial losses when I'm starting out new. Uh, so I think one thing that we look at is, every time you start off something new, we have something called, like a learning fund, right? Or this, buffer fund of sort. Essentially, it's it's a small amount of money that, you keep aside, which you'll be using for this particular experiment. Like when I'm looking this cookie experiment, right? I want to see that, okay, I can spend maybe 10,000 rupees on it, right? I spend this 10,000 rupees on, like, maybe purchasing some products, maybe the raw materials and all. Maybe I'll spend about 5,000 on it, and after that, maybe I'll spend another, couple of thousand in terms of, trying to, maybe make some marketing collateral, maybe do this, maybe do that. That's essentially, it's some kind of a buffer that I set up. And so every time I'm running an experiment or a MVP, it has to be within these bounds, right? I know that, okay, this is the amount of, this is a corpus, this is the buffer I've set aside for it, and I have to run within that. Because and that's also what helps you get more creative, right? You know that I have only limited amount of money, and then you start, innovating, you start, being creative with, how you can do it, how can I, do this within, within these tight constraints, right? Because if there is unlimited money, or if you don't have a grip on it, then, things might just, balloon up, right? You won't really realize where you're, where you're heading to. So I think it's always about budgeting is extremely important, no matter what stage of the journey you're at. If it's early days, maybe an experimental budget at that. If it's a later stage, then again, right, a lot of businesses have great products, and like they get a lot of love and feedback from customers, but just because they are budgeting, or the expenses and revenues don't always tie into each other, don't always align very well, the business and ultimately wind down, right? They're not profitable over time. So you always have to be careful about that. I think for these experiments, always I would suggest keep keep this buffer and ensure that you run things within that buffer, right? You have your own personal discipline to ensure that things don't spill over. So so I think that's something which is important. And I think this is me, one of the last thing I wanted to mention about, right, the learning buffer fund. So I think that pretty much calls us to the end of it, unless there are any other questions. I think the one thing that again I'd want to harp on is, no matter what stage of the business you're at, but definitely in the early days and for a MVP, talk to customers, right? There is nothing which will get you better feedback. There is nothing which will help you understand the problem better than talking to your customers, getting their feedback. Oh, you know what? Do you like these cookies? How well? What kind of problem does it solve for you? What time are you having it? Is it a snack? Is it for gifting? That is where all your learnings, all your feedback comes in, and that's also where you figure out what is the right fee that I should be, that the right price that I should be quoting for it. Because you know what, the lot of times as businesses, where we feel a little shy in terms of what we want to charge for it, and we end up being conservative and charging, let's say, an X amount, and you don't realize that the customer would be actually be willing to pay a lot more for it. And of course, sometimes you may make the opposite mistake, where you charge a lot more for what you should be charging for, and of course over then it doesn't scale at all, right? So I think getting to know that is also very, very tricky in terms of how do you price it. So yeah, I think there is no way better way of knowing it than track some of the metrics and being in touch with your customers. So yeah, I think that's something which I'd want to kind of close out with.
I'm very happy actually that you talked about pricing, because that is a concern that we have seen. A lot of our audience has asked us this question before: how do we know if this is the right price? And especially when it's creative entrepreneurs, right? People who are selling products that they have made with their own hands. It's not, they can't really put a tangible cost on this, and this, because a lot of it is also creative energy, their mental energy, the time they've spent on it. So for these entrepreneurs, setting the right price actually becomes a huge pain point.
It is, yeah. And again, right, that is something that we like. I think pricing is a whole, a whole different workshop and topic by itself. More than a workshop, is like a proper course, right, which could be done in a in a school or something, right? So, but yeah, there can be a lot written about it. But yes, I think this is something that we constantly have to we have to get. Again, there are different strategies to it, right, in terms of. But I think the best way I look at is always look in terms of what is the value that I add to the particular user, customer, that is, and what is kind of problem I'm solving for them, right? And when you think about that in terms of the problem and the customer, you have a fairly good idea in terms of what their propensity is, right? Is it, am I solving for like a very premium customer? Am I solving for for like a more mass customer, right?
Hmm.
And then again, right, how often do I envision them to purchase this? Because like all of these go hand in hand. So I think those are some of the key things that we look at. But yes, I would say don't be afraid to experiment on pricing. And sometimes, if not the pricing directly in terms of how much am I charging for a cookie, then maybe indirect approaches, right? Maybe try to bundle them. Okay, I'll sell a cookie for X, right? But maybe I could sell like a pack of 20 for something, right? And I could afford to be a little more creative with that in terms of maybe offering a higher discount or something, and see if that works. Maybe I could do something like bundling with some other product, right? Maybe having, let's say, adding a coffee and cookie, or like maybe something else, or cupcake, and see how this works, right? Some of these indirectly also give us, because again, your customers also don't want to be like thinking, oh, ye kya hai? Like some days for $10, some days for $25, like what's really happening, right? They don't know how to run a business, right? You don't want them to give that kind of an impression. So there are other ways of getting that kind of feedback. And of course, right, another way is just simply run offers and discounts and stuff, right? Like a month end and year end or festive discount and stuff. So I think that's something we also do. I think it does help a lot. So yeah, don't. And it's a tried and tested age old strategy, right? Every brand out there does it. So don't hesitate in doing some of these things. And yeah, it's your business, right? You have to learn from it, and you have to have fun doing it. If it's not fun, if
Hmm.
it's not like profitable from a from a monetary standpoint, then yeah, again, there's also no fun in it, right? So I think some of these things do go hand in hand, right? But at the end of it, as people also, we want to grow, right? You want to make money, you want to see a thriving business, but you also want to do something creative and
Yeah.
gain from it at an individual level, right? So Yep, that's very important. So yeah, having fun and learning along the way is extremely important.
Ankur was mentioning today morning that D2C brand owners have this, they get bragging rights because what they do is they try to be unique, they try to be different, and they know that they're challenging the traditional ways of doing business, right? So they get bragging rights.
Yes, yes, and of course, right? As in, I think there is always this, when you see your name out there, with a product, with your name or something, there is always a bit of pride. I think that vanity, that pride is important for every human out there. I don't think it's an Indian or a cultural thing. I think it's there across the world. So, and honestly, I think it's good because as businesses, there is also the other side, right? There's this entire stress and suffering we go through. Your sleepless nights, constantly thinking and worrying about things and worrying about trivial things at times, maybe big things at times. So yes, it's not an easy journey. So yeah, I mean, whatever, like these smaller things, these bragging rights, if it helps you compensate a bit for that, then why not? So yeah, I don't think you should be ashamed of that. We should take pride in it, and definitely wear it on our sleeve.
Thank you so much, Akash. I think this was a very insightful conversation. I know because of time we had to sort of cut short the presentation, but we really did cover most of it. What I did take away from this conversation is that we do need to talk more about product market fit, because that's a conversation that we had yesterday in the panel discussion as well. So we'll definitely be releasing more content on that. We already do have a lot of content on pricing strategies, so please do check out our blog. So this brings us to the end of day 2. We have one more event left, that is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It's a fireside chat with the CRO of Bliss Club. Please remember, it's a closed room event, so unless you register for it, we cannot privately send you the Zoom link to join. Thank you again for everybody watching, and thank you, Akash, for joining.
Thank you. That's been fun. See you.